everybody, welcome. Hope you are having a great morning, afternoon, evening, day. So today I want to talk about a really frustrating behavior that we parents often face. Most parents face it, but with ADHD kids, it is really very common, I should say. And that's our kids lying. They lie straight to our face, even though the lie is obvious, um, even if the consequences are death, like they will lie just like that. And so we need to figure out why they're doing this, as well as how do we handle it without using shame, being angry, punishing. I did a post yesterday, or you may be in this group for quite a while now, but basically any behavior you're seeing from your ADHD kid is usually a symptom of some kind of skill gap that they're having, not necessarily a moral problem. I know it feels like that, and it is very frustrating, and it will make you, get to anger very quickly. But lying is actually a panic response for our kids. It's usually not malicious in intent. It is their brain that's frantically dealing with a massive executive functioning failure in the moment. So the three core executive functioning skills that fail at this time are response inhibition, because the ADHD brain has no pause button, so they are just um, shouting out or answering before they're really thinking about the situation or what's really happening or what's being asked of them. And then working memory, they can't always understand the truth and the consequences. They're not always able to remember the consequences from a prior time that this may have happened. So it takes ADHD kids a lot longer to learn from their mistakes. And also emotional control. That is when the brain gets like so overwhelmed with panic about getting in trouble, about trying to come up with a lie, trying to figure out what they need to do in this situation. And so it's kind of like a domino effect with the ADHD brain, that it can't stop the impulsive lying. Once that panic sets in, the impulse takes over and controls the behavior. So it isn't really a moral failing. So if I don't want you to think that, oh my gosh, I'm raising a liar. Um, and I know that this is general, because there are kids that lie just to lie. Um, and but we're talking about the average ADHD kid. It's more of a neurological reaction to fear and anxiety. They're reacting out of survival. So our kids are always in that fight or flight mode. They're waiting for a punishment, or to get yelled at, or to get that 3-hour lecture on why you shouldn't lie. Um, so when they lie, it's often a knee-jerk reaction to avoid getting into trouble, or to avoid feeling ashamed, or, in trouble once again. And so that is kind of what happens. And I can say that as a person that has impulse control issues, at some points, I say things and they are coming out of my mouth, and I know that they're not, should not be. And it's like I want to reel them in, and my brain does not connect with my mouth quickly enough, and I will put my foot in my mouth often. So it's kind of similar when your kids are lying. It's kind of just like you're almost out of body, like you see this happening and you're like, no, and it happens anyway. So, but how do we deal with this? How do we fix it? Well, we can't fix it by yelling at them or shaming them, because that just is going to spike even more panic and it breeds more lying. And our goal is really to respond to the panic and the fear, not the lie. Okay, hold on. I got a question. Garen has ADHD and high functioning autism, so he tends to be too honest and he can come across as rude. He'll tell you what he did and give no shits. He often doesn't know why he's done what he's done, but he will own it. Okay, so that is a unique thing. So what they're saying is their son has ADHD as well as autism, and that's my two kids, right? So they can't really lie. They have a hard time lying, and I can tell right away if they're lying. Now, my youngest sounds exactly like your Karen. It comes off as really rude because they are very literal and they basically will see a situation and just tell you. And most people do not like that when they say something that is truthful. So it does come off as rude, and we have had to work with my youngest on that. They used to, someone would knock on the door and they would answer the door. It'd be one of their friends they want to play. And they'd be like, hey, you want to come out and play? And they're like, no. And they just shut the door. It's like, wow, kids are going to find that rude and they're going to eventually not want to come over because of the way that you are interacting with them. So we need to work on that a little bit. So yeah, it's unique when you have an ADHD kid as well as having autism because they kind of just they are just at a constant battle. It's like that angel and devil kind of thing on your shoulder. You get the devil, which is the ADHD, and the angel, which is the autism, and they're constantly fighting. Um, so yeah, that's a unique situation, and that is quite fun to deal with sometimes. But what you can do um, with your ADHD kid is kind of a two-step thing. I mean, first off, it's kind of a given, but we don't always do it because we also react in a knee-jerk way because we don't want to have a kid that goes around lying all the time. And it also feels very disrespectful to a parent when your child lies to you. So waiting until everyone's calm. So you can't do this in the midst of the lie, a meltdown. You cannot teach any kind of skill when the brain is in a fight or flight mode. So the conversation about the lie needs to happen when everybody is fully regulated. And that could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour or two later, it could be even the next day. And then the next is trying to them about this without involving shame or punishment. So when you do sit down, you want to remove a lot of the judgmental language instead you want to focus on the observation and the lagging skill while reminding them that you unconditionally love them. So saying something like, I noticed earlier you said this to me, and it seems like the reality of the situation is a little bit different. So I want you to know I love you tremendously. And a lie doesn't change that. We're not going to talk about getting in trouble or anything. I'm wondering if you're worried about consequences. And so you're saying that lie, or what is the reasoning behind that? So can we talk about it so that it will maybe not feel as scary? Like what made you scared to tell me the truth right then? And I've had these conversations with my kids, and so my youngest always would lie to me when they were younger and we were like, potty training and they would have an accident. And they would be like, I'm like, did you have an accident? No. And like, I can smell it, man. Like, and they would full on just be lying and lying. And we had to have a conversation saying, you're not going to get in trouble if that happens. I would rather you tell me the truth because we can fix it pretty easily. So, but it still took a long time for my kid not to lie about that. Um, so yeah, it can take a while, and having the conversation about, why you're scared to tell me, and if it's fear of getting in trouble, how can I take away that fear? I can say, I'm not going to get mad at you, but do they truly believe it? So that's the two things that you kind of need to keep in mind when your kid is lying. And it also will, depend on the lie. Now, it doesn't mean that there's absolutely no consequences, because yes, there should be consequences when you lie. But when we frame it this way, we can take away the shame or the guilt, because that's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to teach your kid that they need to be truthful, and that there are consequences to their actions, to the things that they do. So Anne Marie, yeah, I'd say my mom said no, but Karen would say, I don't like you. Yeah, I gotta, I mean, having a kid with any neurodivergency is just, every day is just wondering what's around the next corner. And it it can be frustrating, and getting angry and mad, but it's also, I mean, these kids come up with things and they are hysterical. So it's kind of hard when your kid is doing something and you're trying not to laugh about it. So anyways, as I said, we want to frame it without that shame or guilt, and we want to use collaboration rather than jumping right into punishment, so you can separate the child's identity from the behavior. They aren't a liar. They're a good kid whose brain panicked, who made a mistake, right? We all do that. And, we all are guilty of lying to either save face, or, think we're being polite, or to get out of something. So we have to understand that it's also kind of like a human thing that we do. So being able to help your kid learn about lying, and as Anne Marie is saying, like, how do we talk to our kids about not lying, but then talk about, well, when you say to somebody bluntly, I don't like you, like, how do you talk to them about lying to be polite, or rephrasing things? So it's a hard thing when you do have a neurodivergent kid, because it is, when they're so literal, and you say you shouldn't lie. So your kid says something like, I don't like you, or I think your breath smells, or whatever. And then you're saying, well, we don't say that to people because that's, rude. But mom, you told me not to lie. So it's a whole nother thing when your kid also has the autism literalness, I guess. But anyways, once the shame is gone, you can start to focus on the repair and the skill practice part of it, instead of you lied, you're punished. So teaching them how to use a pause button, like, thinking of it, telling them to think of it as a pause button, right? So I use this thing I call the PBC method in my program, and you can teach them that it's always safe to say, Mom, my brain's panicking right now. I need a minute or two to answer, or teaching them how to pause and take a breath, and then um, override that impulse, so that they can choose what they're going to say next. And as I said, as an adult, it is still difficult for me to sometimes pause and reflect on what I might be saying. Um, so I talked about that, and then, there should be a consequence. So if they have lied, they should have some kind of a consequence, but we want to make sure it's a compassionate skill building consequence, something that they're going to learn from, and not a punishment. Like if they lied about doing their homework, the consequence shouldn't be like they're grounded for a week. The consequence should be, okay, well, now you're going to sit down and do the homework. Plus, maybe you're going to spend an extra 10 minutes or so sitting with me and planning out your assignments of what you have for the rest of the week, and so that you have a plan. So we got to focus on that repair, not the pain. Like many of us grew up that to learn from our mistakes was to feel pain. Like you had to feel pain in order to learn the lesson. So by doing it this way, we're addressing those skill deficits that our kids have with a kind of structured and collaborative support. So I cover a lot of this in the roadmap program, the framework that I use when I teach parents. But learning how to collaborate with your kid, give them the support they need while also having it be a learning experience, how to help them understand what's happened and ways to fix it, and that mistakes are okay, and that you're going to make them, and us as parents trying not to get mad when those mistakes happen. We are more likely to get mad at our kids when they make a mistake than, say, like if a friend made a mistake. I use the example a lot, like if you're in a restaurant and you've been telling your kid 100 times to be careful because your drink is on the side, you're going to knock your drink over. And then they knock the drink over and you immediately get mad. I told you this was going to happen, and da 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 da, that kind of thing. Whereas if your friend was doing this and talking and knocked their drink over, you wouldn't be yelling at them. You would be like, oh, that's okay. Let's pick it up, or whatever. So thinking of it in that way, I know it's harder when you're a kid because your whole mindset is, I have to teach them to be a human. And you're always thinking like that kind of a situation. So anyways, that's pretty much it that I have for today. Also, if you're looking for more ways to get cooperation from your kids, learn about working on those skills that your kid may be weak on, then if you haven't already done so, you can register for my free webinar, which is how to stop the daily battles and finally connect with your ADHD kid. Putting the link below in this video if you haven't. If things do get dicey, try that pause button. And remember to comment with any questions, any wins. I will see them even if this is you're watching this as a replay. Have a great day. Keep moving forward, guys.